Thanks people, it's Paul here at Green Shore Homestead. I'm going to do a quick video here on pole beans. The reason that most people don't like to grow pole beans that I've talked to is the trellising. It up and down, you know, beginning of the year put it up, end of the year take it down. It does become kind of a hassle. I thought this up though, and it has worked for me very well for 2 years, and it's a permanent trellis basically. This is baling twine, which is UV protected, and it's designed for, you know, it's called baling twine because you use it to make hay, bind your hay bales. And like alfalfa hay, a hay bale weighs 70 pounds, and you know, this is what you pick it up with in the field, and you throw it on the hay wagon or up in the loft, and not only can you pick the bale up, but you can throw it, and when the bale lands it doesn't break because this is so tough. I don't know what the weight ratio it'll hold, but it's substantial, and because it's UV protected, this will last 6 or 7 years out here on this building. What I've done is I've taken screws and put them in the base plate, so they're not through the metal, they're just in the base plate. And then on the top I put I've got some treated lumber that I put across there underneath the rain gutter, painted it black because the rain gutter's black, and so that also helps support the rain gutter in ice and snowstorms. And then I just ran the screws into that lumber, and then I just wove the baling twine from the screws, you know, at the top and the bottom. So the other problem with the pole beans is they get so tall, you know, 10, 11 feet tall, and that makes it difficult to harvest. But in this case, I can just take my ladder and lean it against the building, and then I climb up the ladder. You know, I've got an extension ladder, so when I just lean it against the building, it goes all the way to the top. I climb up the ladder, put a 5-gallon bucket on the ground, and then as I'm picking the beans, I just drop them from the ladder right into the bucket, and I just move the ladder all the way down the line. So I've got a nice stable place in which to stand while I'm harvesting, and it makes it very simple. And then when the season's over and it's time you know, to get the bean stalks and all the leaves and everything off of there, I do the same thing. I climb up the ladder, and then I rake my hands down the stalks like that, and get all the stems and the leaves off. The main runner beanstalk I just leave on there. As you can see, there's 2 of them on there because this is the 3rd year I'll be growing beans, and the 3rd beanstalk will just run right up these 2 existing stalks with the baling twine. These don't get moldy or mildewy because they're completely dry, so it's not going to be a problem. That just gives the next year's beanstalk a little more structure to grab to. So I just plant a bean under each piece of baling twine, and then as the bean starts to grow, if it wants to lean away from the wall a little bit, I just run it around the baling twine a couple of times, and the bean takes it from there. It runs all the way up to the top. They'll actually exceed this 10-foot wall and kind of drape over onto the rain gutter a little bit. So pole beans are highly productive, and they take up very little space. You know, they're only taking up a space about this size. So I plant my pole beans along the wall, and then I plant bush beans along the front of the bed here. Of course, if you know you're a gardener, you're thinking to yourself, well, you got to rotate your plants. You can't grow the same thing in the same bed every year, and that's a good point. So what I do is I grow my beans in here for 3 years, and then they go into the other garden. I've got another apparatus that's built out of 2x4s and baling twine that I just screw to my garden fence on the north wall. You want these on the north usually because they're going to throw shadows, shade, because they get so tall. But then I plant something else in here for 2 years. So for three years they grow in here, and then 2 years in the garden, then they're back in here for 3. So that's how I've been doing it. That's how a lot of the farmers around here do it when they grow their beans. They'll grow them for 3 years in the same field, and then they'll put corn in and for a couple of years, and then back with the beans. So the pole beans are extremely productive. They will put beans out all season. As long as you're picking the beans, they will put them out. And a lot of people I don't think are too familiar with the diversity of the beans. This is called a dual-purpose bean here. With the pole beans, you have two types of beans. Basically, you have your snap beans, which this would be, and then you have your dry beans, which this would be, shell beans or dry beans. And you cannot eat this dry bean or shell bean as a green bean. Basically a green bean is a dual-purpose bean in its immature state. So this bean right here, this is called Ideal Market. It's an heirloom that I got from Seed Savers. The bean itself is black, but in its immature state, when this is first coming on as a bean pod, that's what you would be harvesting for your green beans. The beans that you get at the store, you know, in the cans, if you've ever looked at them close while you're eating them, you a lot of times can't even see a bean, and if you can see a bean, it's going to be very small and very white in its color because it's an immature bean. You're basically eating bean pods, not green beans. And then as the bean if you leave it on the vine and don't pick it as a green bean, we do both. We'll come out here in June and I'll pick the green beans and take them in the house, and Adrian cans them up as green beans, you know, the stuff you'd be normally seeing at the store. But then once we have enough of those, I start letting the beans mature on the vine, not completely to where they're this dry, but this pod would be kind of leathery in its texture. It would be more yellow than tan. This is actually pretty tan right now, but and the bean inside is going to be black. I'm going to bring this in real close. Listen to this. You hear that's real crunchy, okay? And then when you open this pod, these are the mature beans, which, as you can see, are very black, very shiny, and they're very, very firm. You cannot squeeze that at all. So that's why this is a dual-purpose bean. You can grow this either as a green bean or as a shell bean / dry bean. And these are very easy to store because they're already stone dry. We just put them in peanut butter jars that we recycle. Same thing here. This would also be green in its immature state, but you can't eat this because the pod would be too chewy. It'd be kind of like gristle on a steak. You know, you just keep chewing it and not getting anywhere. But when we crack this open, the bean that is produced here would be, this is called Good Mother Stollard. They named it after the family that donated it to Seed Savers that brought it over from the old country. But you can see these beans are maroon with white specks, and this would be the mature state of this bean. Now, like I said, you want to continue to harvest the beans so that they will continue to produce. The less you harvest, the less beans you're going to get. The more you harvest, the more beans you're going to get. So you don't want the beans to be in that real dry, leathery or dry, crunchy state that I just showed you, and where the bean is stone hard. You want them to be, you still want the bean to be its full color. Whenever you get the beans from the store, the catalog, wherever you're ordering them from, you know, these would obviously be the maroon and white speckled, and these would be black. That's the color that you want to harvest them at. So when the Ideal Markets are completely black, you want to harvest. When the Good Mother Stollards are fully maroon and white, you want to harvest them. And at that point, the seed pod is going to be kind of leathery. It's going to be yellow or tannish in color, and it's going to be more leathery and pliable than it would be dry and crunchy. If you wait till it's dry and crunchy, you're going to get a lot less beans because you're waiting too long to harvest. And then both of those we're just going to store in the peanut butter jars. So I'm going to bring the camera in closer here and let you see how I got the screws set up, and then how I've run the twine, and then we're going to go on in the house, and I'll show you how we store those up. You see the screws down there in the base plate, right below the metal trim, and then they run up to the top, and then around that screw there, over to that one, back down, over to that one, and back up, and so on, all the way down the building. I just don't put them where the windows are for obvious reasons. So that's why we grow pole beans, because they're highly productive. This is how we grow pole beans. The structure that I have in my garden is similar, but it's just made out of 2x4s and baling twine. So we'll go on in the basement, and I'll show you how we store these. Okay, so we're here in the basement. we've got the green beans here and we got the dry beans here. These green beans are the black ones that I showed you outside, the ideal markets. You can see here that you can see some of the bean here. Some of the pods you can see the beans and some you can't. But this tells me that this was a little bit later of a harvest on the green beans. And then here's the same beans, but you can see here at the end of those, you can't see any beans in there at all. And these beans are a little greener than those. Those have kind of started to turn a little more yellow, and these are brighter green. So that tells me that these were harvested earlier in the season. So these were probably mid to late June, and these were probably second week of July or so. But then these are the same beans here, dry bean, green bean, the same exact bean. This has just gone all the way to its mature state. So that's why it's a dual purpose bean. So you can see here where we've got all the beans are just in the peanut butter jar. They're dry as a stone, and they will keep for decades like that. We've got all these empty peanut butter jars up here. You know, we eat this peanut butter, then we clean the jars out. We probably got 200, maybe 300 of those empty jars. And right here, this is 8 rows, 5 deep, so there's 40 jars of beans right there. And up there we've got 7. And over here we got at least a dozen. So we got some 60 jars of beans right here. And they don't require any heat in that we don't have to pressure can them. We don't have to dehydrate them in a dehydrator or a freeze dryer or anything like that. So there's no energy that's being expelled by this homestead to get these to the point where they're dry. The only thing we do is when we bring them in from the garden, because we don't let them get rock hard on the vine, like I said, you know, because we want the beans to keep producing. They're still going to be their full color, but they're going to be a little bit squishy because they're not stone dry yet. And then we just put them on this old bean screen. And this is just regular screen door screen, and I've got a lip around the bottom, so that keeps them up off of the surface of the the floor, the countertop, the table, wherever we have them. And then there's a lip around the top here that keeps them from rolling off, because they'll be like marbles rolling everywhere. And that way we can get a lot of beans on the bean screen, and if we set that on the table and then company comes over, we need the table for something, we just pick that whole thing up without the beans running off and set it somewhere else. So the bean screen's a real handy tool, and they'll sit on that for 2 or 3 weeks till they're stone dry, and then they go in the jars. So when we harvest them, I pull them off the vines, drop them in the 5-gallon bucket. I bring the 5-gallon bucket in, and then in the evening when Adrian and I are watching TV, we just shell the beans out of the pods and put the pods in one bowl, and we put the beans in another. We pour them on the bean screen, and then when they're dry, we put them in the jars. So, and up here we have, this is a pepper, and man, I wish you could smell that. You can see there it's no mold, no mildew in there. This pepper, I happen to know, is at least 4 years old in here, because we don't grow this pepper on this particular homestead. We've been here 4 years. This is from our old homestead, and because this is our retirement house. So this has been in the jar at least 4 years, and as I showed you, there's no mold or mildew. These we did have to put in the dehydrator, so there was electricity used, but still, they'll keep for years like that. So that, I think it's, it demonstrates the productivity of the pole bean, the multi-purpose of the pole bean, and then with the trellis being built against the building like that, it's a minimum amount of time that's spent too. So I really think this is a good way of keeping some sustainability here on the homestead. So this is Paul saying, if you like the video, please give me a like click on the like button and subscribe. We'll see you next time at Greenshire. Thanks for watching.